everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's me and Nate. It's nice here today. I'm very excited, although I did just see that, like, because, you know, nice days in February, it's like, yeah, it's going to be 65 degrees maybe, but also you could die in a tornado. So that's my next 48 hours of Midwest living, is enjoying t-shirts and shorts and dying in a funnel cloud. How are things going on your side of the pond?
Well, I mean, it depends if we're just talking about weather or if we're talking about other things, you know, in general.
We'll talk about whatever you want, man. It's our podcast.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, so it was almost 60 degrees today. So, you know, to paraphrase the Stringer Bell quote from The Wire without using any slurs, I was damn near barbecuing on this motherfucker because it was so, it just, I got on my bike and I was like, you know, I'm dressed pretty light. I'm wearing my fingerless cycling gloves, but I actually felt a little warm just in my jacket and t-shirt, like genuinely, because it was just, I'm so used to doing it when it's like hovering around freezing. So daylight today, yeah, but it's been dumping rain. It's been kind of shitty. I don't know. I mean, like, you know, warm weather makes you feel optimistic. It's just weird how it's just this natural lift when you're out. You know, I went running on Monday because it was Valentine's Day, so I was going to cook a nice dinner for Cynthia. So I was like, well, I'll just work from home today. And, you know, I dawdled a little bit, but I got out the door around 4, you know, and then came back and started cooking dinner and it worked till about, you know, 8:15. Then we ate and it was all good. But it was just funny because early in the day, it was clear. It was looking pretty nice. I was like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. I'll run when I run. I get out and it immediately starts drizzling. I'm like, oh, fuck. And then I keep going and I'm like, oh, fucking shit. Just sheets of rain, just completely soaked. And in a way, once you get to that point, because it's not too cold, you're just like, whatever, I'm just along for the ride. I remember, you know, summer PT at Fort Benning when we just get completely soaked. And you're just like, yeah, whatever. You know, like, it's life. So I went and ran a 5K, came home, cooked dinner. I made filet, like the not filet mignon, but like that kind of steak, you know, and I have I have the big wok burner, like the 120,000 BTU gas burner. So I fired that thing up with a cast iron skillet and, you know, cooked the steaks that way. It's incredible. It just, yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit excessive, but you can really, really get it, you know, super hot that way and then sear the steaks. But,
there's nothing wrong with a little cooking, you know, excess when it comes, like, because my wife and I, we just bought a bread maker because we saw it at the thrift store for like $10 and we had a coupon. So, those used to be all the fucking rage. Everybody had a bread maker, and that was, you know, pre-pandemic, before everybody, you know, lockdown was like, I'm going to make, you know, depression bread. But this is the bread machine is just a fantastic invention. You just put everything into it and you push a button and 3 hours later bread happens. And now we got she just came back from Costco yesterday with a corned beef, because it's getting to be that time where we eat a bunch of salty meat. So, and that's great. Just pop that in the Instant Pot and that's done in 90 minutes, man.
What's the occasion besides Catholic shit with St. Patrick's Day?
I mean, it's just
Irish Catholic shit.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we're coming up on March, so St. Patrick's Day is coming up. So the corned beef is rotated to the front of things at Costco. So, and
when I was a little kid, my mom had this like parenting hack because she just discovered that I really liked this combination of 3 things that came in a tin as dinner, and so she was like, if I have to make dinner for a 3-year-old, you know, I wasn't really a picky eater at that age, but you know, there were certain things I liked and disliked. And she discovered that at age 3 to 4, my favorite meal in the world that I would eat every single night if I could get away with it, which I couldn't because it wouldn't have been healthy, but was corned beef hash.
Like out of the can?
Yeah, like she would heat it up in a skillet, but corned beef hash, creamed corn, and fruit cocktail, all of which come in cans. So she would be like, you know, obviously you're not going to eat a whole fucking can when you're 3. You eat like the size, like a serving size is like a cup's worth, but maybe. But yeah, she'd make corned beef hash and some creamed corn in a little bowl and some fruit cocktail for dessert, and I'd be super happy with it. So I'm actually a fan of corned beef. I'm a fan of corned beef hash. I realize it's probably terrible for you, super salty, whatever. I eat salt like a deer, but you know, I do realize that at a certain point, it's perhaps a little bit unwise. Although, in fairness, I've never had a problem in any health screening with blood pressure or anything, cholesterol, anything like that. In fact, when I got my most recent health screening, they basically told me that my cholesterol was was so low that it was slightly below tolerance for someone my age. And I got told that like I basically I didn't deserve to have vitals this good because I wasn't in good enough shape. And I was like, that's fucking right. That's right. Embrace it. You get to take the L. I have this enormous W. You have no idea. Like, it literally exceeds all human comprehensions of scale. But yeah, corned beef, man. It's if you like it, you like it. Hell yeah, I'm not Catholic, but
it's the only thing. This is the only time that we eat it, and it's also before, like, there's so many like my wife and I are not Catholic, but we are culturally Catholic because we were both raised Catholic, and St. Louis is a very Catholic city. So there's a lot of holdover from that. Like once Lent comes around, all the schools are going to be doing fish fries again, hopefully. So, and that, like, fish fries, it's not good food. It's not like great, but for some reason there's just something about like being in like the cafeteria of a Catholic grade school at 6:00 with a pitcher of like Bud Light, like a plastic pitcher of Bud Light that you spent $8 on, and some deep fried cod and tartar sauce and mac and cheese bites is one of the big things. And because the Catholics get the whole like you can't eat meat on Lent and everything. And to be fair, I think that is like even relaxed. Like it used to be you couldn't eat meat all through Lent, and then like on Fridays you just didn't eat. But Catholics, we don't like to be uncomfortable. So
it's very funny because one of my boss's bosses at my old company was observant enough Irish Catholic, East Coast Irish Catholic guy that he, went to mass every Sunday, but they just like had some sort of priest gave a dispensation for them to eat meat on St. Patrick's Day. And I was just like, oh, that fucking rules. I mean, quite frankly, I've heard of rabbis applying dispensations for people can eat barbecued pork in the South. And you know what? Like, we all embrace being religious hypocrites one way or the other. Now, don't get me wrong. Eating pork is definitely like contravenes what you call kashrut, the sort of rules of Jewish dietary practice. But you know what? Folks in the South, they need exceptions to be able to eat barbecued pork, and like that's life. Sometimes you got to make exceptions. If you forced me to choose one way or the other, like which religion from the ones I was raised with I would identify the most with, clearly it's going to be Judaism, but like I'm not religious, I don't practice, and so it's just like I maybe feel a little bit of guilt making pork products for dinner, but they are fucking good. And also my wife probably feels guilt for being raised Catholic and like not observing Lent and all these sorts of things either. So
look, the only guilt I feel about eating pork is that like pigs are very smart, and I feel bad eating something that's smart. But
I feel worse about it. Yeah, 100% that way. Then
I stopped eating octopus because of that. And to be fair, I don't eat a whole lot of octopus, so it was really easy to just be like, oh, I just won't eat this anymore. But like pig, like man, like Beth she also brought home like some pork tenderloin from Costco, and like just cooking that, like getting a good sear on that and then baking it properly and then getting just like, oh, it's so good. And it's like, I feel bad because you're so smart, pig, but also I'm hypocritical. So,
oh yeah, 100%. It's like eating the family dog level of they are smart animals. They are incredibly clever. They're observant. They recognize patterns. They have all sorts of like responses that demonstrate that they're clearly animals of significant intelligence. And we fucking love eating them.
They shouldn't have been so delicious. My bad.
Well, hopefully in the future they'll invent Star Trek replicators that'll let us have pork products with zero guilt, zero harm caused, and we'll be freed from our human vices by replicators. But
then we're gonna have to deal with what do we do with this big pig population? Like we've got enough feral hogs, and our AR-15s can only deal with so many of them. So
we have to find a habitable planet to become Planet of the Hogs. We send them.
Is that not just England?
Well, in a different sense, yes, it is 100%. So speaking of England, we're going to talk about a slightly English story. Well, more than slightly English, but a story that's wrapped up in all of the weird delusions of grandeur of the British state. It's longings for imperial greatness to be restored, all these sorts of things that became relevant during the COVID pandemic. So I got to ask you, Francis, before we start reading, what do you know about Captain Tom Moore?
Okay, so I remember that Captain Tom was an old, I think, World War II veteran. Maybe
That's correct.
He was very aged, and I heard that he did a lot of walking around to raise money for veterans charities, and everybody really liked him because he was a cute old man who fought in World War II. Probably, and we do that thing where we're just like, look at him, he's so nice, he's such a hero, and likely he had horrendous PTSD and everything, as we know with most people who survived World War II and have that many medals on their chest. But it was a nice feel good story, and it was a good way to raise some money for the troops. And I'm sure that that's what it was, and there was nothing questionable or anything about it, right?
Well, there's one factual error I need to correct you on. He wasn't raising money for the troops. He was raising money for the sort of amalgamated charity arm of the NHS. Which is a bit of a concern to me. On one hand, he did wind up raising almost 33 million pounds. That's about $45-ish million for NHS charities. However, the NHS is publicly funded. It's a state-owned healthcare service. They shouldn't rely on an old man having to walk 100 laps in his garden to raise money for it. Like, it should be properly funded. And the NHS has had real terms cuts because its budget increases have not kept pace with inflation. Its employees have had serious real terms cuts in their earnings because they're so underpaid. Also, there's a ton of vacancies, so people are having to cover down because it's a very difficult place to work because of deliberate mismanagement on the part of the coalition and then Tory-led government since 2010. But quite frankly, privatization has been creeping into the NHS since Thatcher was the prime minister. And in fact, the NHS, I think I've talked about it before, was only fully covered everything to include optical and dental for 3 years before they cut the budget for the NHS and axed those provisions in order to fund the UK sending an expeditionary force to the Korean War in 1951. So the NHS has, like I said, I'm dead serious. You could get optical and dental for free on the NHS from 1948 to 1951. And then they're like, well, we need to go do some imperialism. Let's fucking just axe that shit and send guys to Korea. And don't get me wrong, they profited massively from exploitation in places like Malaya during the foundation of the NHS. Like the UK state, it's a whole topic for a whole different discussion. However, I would say there's a slight bit, let's call it ideological disconnect here. Captain Tom raised money, but he was raising money for the NHS, which is very frustrating because the NHS isn't a charity and shouldn't rely on charity. It's a state-run healthcare service. Like, it should be funded correctly. But welcome to Britain, a country that's insane. So, what I wanted to tell you is that there are 2 points of divergence here that are very, very funny, that I feel as though you might get a kick out of.
Okay, I'm ready.
Number 1, the origin of Captain Tom walking laps around the garden was apparently his son-in-law suggested he do that, and they give him £1 for every lap because they couldn't attend his birthday party for his 100th birthday because of COVID restrictions. Now that's putting a nice spin on it. As Alice, my co-host on Trash Future, has said, is that basically the first domino was some guy being like, Dad, just fuck off down the garden and I'll give you £1. And that turns into, on New Year's, they did a fucking drone swarm LED artwork display of Captain Tom in the sky. As
very the Trailer Park Boys, I'll give you £100. I'll give you $100 to fuck
100%. It's that. It's I'll give you £100 to fuck off. So, one other detail that is extremely funny about this, before we talk about the Captain Tom Foundation, is that Captain Tom raised all this money for NHS charities. He then his family then set up a consultancy and charity thing, which received a ton of donations. Which there's been some sketchy apportionment of funds. We'll put it that way. However, here's the thing that I don't know if Americans know, because maybe they're familiar with, yes, old World War II veteran walking around with a walker in his garden, raising money for the NHS, getting knighted, wearing his medals, etc. He was then, because of he was knighted, and he was this celebrity in Britain. And for his service, they decided to take him on an all expenses paid trip to Barbados, run by British Airways. So he went to Barbados. He then got COVID and died.
Jesus Christ.
Yes.
I knew he died. I didn't know he got COVID.
He got COVID in Barbados on a trip that British Airways brought him on as a fucking publicity stunt, and he died.
Fantastic.
So the Captain Tom Foundation, they've received well over £1 million of donations. Since they have been in operation, they have, according to this article from joe.co.uk, they have made 4 grants to other charities, which is sort of the purpose of the foundation, to direct money to charities. £40,000 each, so a total of £160,000. They also spent £400,000 on operating costs, of which, how to describe it? They paid themselves £125,000 in consultancy fees.
Sure. Right.
£162,336 was used on management costs, meaning more money was spent running the foundation than was donated to the charities.
What's a charity other than a massive graft?
So what gets me about this is, let's just take it from the top. Adult children don't want to deal with their fucking elderly dads. They tell them to fuck off, and they'll pay them £100 to do laps. This becomes this mawkish national fucking charity drive, plugging holes in the sinking ship of the SS United Kingdom or HMS United Kingdom because it doesn't fund its welfare state, because its governing party is ideologically opposed to all aspects of the state, to include even the cops and the military, which is very funny but also very distressing sometimes. They then do a publicity stunt to take him to Barbados, where he gets COVID and dies. And his kids set up a foundation in his name, which they then use to grift and pay themselves 6-figure salaries with. I present to you the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
This poor old man, like, I hope I'm not abused by my daughter when I get this old. Like, to just be told to fuck off around the garden. I mean, more than likely I'd be doing that anyway, but it's such a ramp up, and it's such a, like, you know, it's one of those things that, like, would be discussed in 100 years on Lions Led by Donkeys. Like, one of those things where in the future everybody's like, that was really stupid, and I can't believe that people in the past would be that dumb. But it's now, it's the future, it's the current time, and it really did happen, and really nobody's apologizing for it. They're just like, well, the guy's dead. How can we keep wringing money out of it for ourselves?
He's dead because we basically killed him.
Right. I mean, look, he was old. He was over 100 years old.
He was 100. So, like, he was going to die. Like, people know that. But, like, he got COVID from a thing they did for publicity. And if you get COVID at age 100, chances are extremely good you are going to die.
Yeah. He could have.
He did.
I'm not saying he had a long, happy life in front of him. I'm just saying he didn't have to die of COVID.
Correct. Do you remember the whole fucking conundrum with the Wounded Warrior Foundation?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, that's what this whole thing sounds like. Is the Wounded
100%.
Warrior, like, you know, it's for soldiers who have been hurt, which, like, again, the thing that should be taken care of by the VA. You know, that thing that we have.
The closest thing to an NHS that America has is the VA, and basically this private charity shows up with really flashy commercials to talk about how they are plugging the gaps left by our failing state, and running ad after ad on Fox News to basically grift guilty boomers. And they use this money to buy, like, you know, pallet upon pallet of expensive gourmet candy and, like, season tickets to every Major League Baseball franchise, and only flying their employees first class everywhere. Like, similar story, you know, once they start kind of believing their own hype about how unimpeachably noble the cause is, then every expense suddenly becomes justified. Mm-hmm. And you're like, wait a minute, but this isn't a charity. This seems like it's a personal enrichment machine for some of the worst people on the planet.
I mean, yeah, and that's really what comes down to, like, every veteran, big veteran thing that gets a lot of airplay and gets a lot of attention from, you know, news organizations, whether it be the left or the right, whether it be, you know, fucking Fox and CNN, both love the Wounded Warrior projects because we love our soldiers, right?
Why would you say the left and the right for Fox and CNN? That's the right and the right.
I know. Well,
I mean, MSNBC,
I don't,
the right and the center right.
Yeah, you mentioned Fox, but like, of course, every major news organization loves soldiers that have been shot up in dumb wars.
I think Wounded Troops is in a lot of ways the closest thing to a bipartisan PR thing that you'll see, in the sense that I don't think that being veterans or veterans in general can like bridge any real meaningful divide in America, but I do think that as far as like dropping the fuck everything pretense that the right uses in government, it's the one time when they'll kind of, and not as a rule. There are plenty of examples of them voting to fuck over veterans and doing shit that's just really shady. But when it comes to like easy dunk PR stuff like this, yeah, wounded veterans is 100% like being for better treatment of wounded veterans is like it makes as much political sense to say that as it is to be like I'm for puppies and rainbows and every child getting a great education. Like
sure, everybody loves the hurt veterans.
I don't recall because I haven't watched fucking broadcast TV in forever. I don't recall if Wounded Warrior stuff during its like peak was pitching super hard on MSNBC, but I know that Fox, CNN.
Jake Tapper fucking jacks off to that shit constantly.
But that's CNN though, and Jake Tapper is really right wing, like in the perspective of actual politics. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I feel as though that we love fucking saying these nostrums about like, oh yeah, the left and the right, but like, what is the left in America versus what is the right? And it's like CNN is the right, in my opinion.
Yeah,
MSNBC is the right wing of the Democratic Party, which is right wing. Fox News is the screaming void of pain. OANN is just that, but with no editorial oversight.
Oh, right. It's the OAN is Goering's wet dream, basically. But I mean, the point that I was going to make there is that like any of these big organizations that kind of crop up, it seems like as soon as they get any level of scrutiny, you find out that like everybody involved is a huge piece of shit. There's like abuse happening, there's graft happening, there's laundering happening of some kind, and it's the same thing. Like this is this. Take a look at the Susan G. Komen Foundation. The people who like when you look at just the breakdown of their finances, and you're like, I'm giving money to you guys, but like 80% of it goes to you advertising about how breast cancer is bad. I fucking know. Can you give some money to those people who research it, please? And there are better organizations out there that do that, and there are better, veteran organizations out there. But at the same time, like this, Vet TV or Black Rifle Coffee Company, obviously,
or fucking what's the t-shirt company that we hate so much?
Grunt Style, Nine Line, all those things that like have this like veneer of we're trying to be somewhat respectable, nudge nudge, wink wink, especially as they're growing older. But of course, the Black Rifle Coffee Company guys, like their IPO went public the same day that somebody was just like, hey, their married co-founder was trying to fuck me constantly when I was working with them. They do. Those organizations do help veterans, the veterans who run the company. Other than that, they don't really help anybody. And my experience in the limited time that I was involved in these sorts of things is that I think that if you did want to donate to charities or things that were helping veterans, the best thing you can look for is stuff that helps at-risk veterans secure stable housing in your community. Mm-hmm. I just remember this from doing some PR work when I was in a corporate job that was tied in somewhat with this, that like, for example, when they were opening a veteran facility in Philadelphia, one of the people that they had brought in, were a veterans housing advocacy group that raised money to secure housing in like the Lehigh Valley. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly because I'm not from Pennsylvania, but like the sort of greater around Philadelphia area of Pennsylvania, that was the organization. And those guys had a great track record of putting veterans in housing because they didn't run ads on Fox about like this man was fighting Al-Qaeda, but then he got shot in the face. And now we have to come in here and buy Braves tickets for 5 seasons straight in order to help him. Like that wasn't happening. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it's kind of like Habitat for Humanity for veterans. Right.
Habitat for Crimes Against Humanity. It's one of these things where I'm saying that tongue in cheek. You know what I mean? Like it's one of these things where like the flashier and bigger the organization is, in my opinion, I feel like maybe it's a platitude, but it makes sense to be cynical or at least really suspicious. And smaller organizations, obviously success can vary here, but they often haven't yet attracted the sort of like coked out MBAs of like the charity superstar world, if you will.
I don't know if you know of any like but look for stuff local. One of our local ones, it's actually was kind of set up by Jason Kander, which is the only reason why I kind of give it a like. I haven't looked into it, but if Jason Kander's into it, I assume that it's being that it's on the up and up, and it's called the Veterans Community Project, where they build tiny houses for veterans. For homeless veterans or veterans who need a place to live. And it's like they build a community of them. Like, it's not just like, here's a tiny house out here. There's like in St. Louis, they broke ground on like a 50 small houses. So like it's a nice little community of veterans. They can all hang out with each other, look out for each other. They have a place to stay. They don't have, sometimes they're older gentlemen. They don't, necessarily have the ability to take care of a larger house or something like that. So there are good things. There are good, it's usually like if I see your charity in the Macy's Day Parade, I'm going to assume that I shouldn't give you money because you have plenty. Somebody else is using you to launder money already. I don't need to send you $50. I'll find something else to send $50 to, or I'll just give $50 to somebody on the side of the street. It'll probably be work out better for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for the fact study upon study upon study seems to keep happening on the same conclusion, which is that just giving people money is how you solve these problems. And instead of being able to admit that, they want to insert middlemen and gatekeepers and assessors and, graders and, people who can fucking, both reward and also discipline and punish, because we have this deep-seated, deep ingrained revulsion to the idea of anybody getting over on us. And it's like we find ways to punish the most vulnerable in society for the hypothetical situation in which they might be getting over on us, while the entirety of our society is based on rich fuckers getting over on us constantly. Mm-hmm. And like, okay, I realize that's more or less class consciousness day one material, but it is still very frustrating at times to see this play out over and over again, and to see people fall for the same bullshit. And I think that in this country, in the United Kingdom in particular, what's interesting to me is that a lot of the veteran-related stuff kind of happens to the exclusion of actual contemporary veterans. Like, there are things like Help for Heroes, and in the olden days, as people who are from here have explained to me, you would buy, these handmade paper poppies made by veterans of, I think it's the Royal British Legion, but I can't remember. But oftentimes these were made by guys who lived in subsidized or free veteran housing. And there was just fundraisers they did around Remembrance Sunday so that those organizations had money. Like, it wasn't this weird thing of like, where's your fucking poppy and whatnot. But the thing that's always really interesting to me about it is, Britain has veterans who suffer the effects of military service. This is not to say that they, this is not to the exclusion of people who are civilians who are affected by their military service. Like, I feel like that should be stated in advance. But if you look at Britain's population of veterans, there's a decent number of people who served in Iraq or Afghanistan. There's a decent number of people who served in Northern Ireland because it's a very long conflict. They have guys who were special operators, et cetera, in those communities who are in places like the Gulf War or in areas in, the post-colonial countries in Africa that Britain was involved in before. You have veterans of the Falklands War. You have veterans of, they're getting on really, really old, but you do have British veterans of World War II, the Korean War, the Suez, stuff along these lines, right? So you've got a huge, relative to the population, chunk of people who served in combat, who were in the military, and oftentimes have worse life outcomes because they were in the military, especially if you are looking at people who were recruited at age 16. They tend to have very, very poor outcomes post-military. So I'm saying this kind of as a preface because all of the veteran stuff, it's kind of fixated on our heroes of, the Somme and World War II. it's always the iconography of World War I and the trenches and the Tommies with the flat rimmed helmets and stuff like that. And which is not to say that, okay, I get it, it's invoking heritage, etc. But like, it often feels as though that stuff is less about veterans than about the sort of mythological greatness of Britain that they represent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're constantly bringing up World War II, even when like there's been lots and lots of other wars Britain's been involved in since World War II.
Yeah,
it's very strange.
Because World War II is the last time that any of us, the big allied nations can be like, that was a war that needed to be fought. We fought the Nazis. The Nazis were bad. Obviously good, bad, Nazis bad, us good. Please don't look any further into anything else that we did during this time. Nazis bad, we're good. Like, on a surface level, it's very easy to keep it there. Like, when we talk about Vietnam War veterans, it's always just nebulous. Like, we know that there's a lot of them. We know that they got hurt in a lot of different ways, both, by us, Agent Orange with various chemicals we were spraying, or just getting shot by, the NVA or the Viet Cong or whatever. But there's no morality there. There's no just like, it was, I'm sorry.
Well, it would be very funny to say, thanks for stopping communism, when they emphatically lost.
Very much.
Lost. We got our asses handed to us. And quite frankly, we deserved to, because that wasn't a war we should have been involved in ever.
I mean, when's the last time we won a war? Like the Gulf, like 91, which is like, I mean, we won, but it wasn't, it wasn't the long drawn out kind of, because World War II is, it's you show up in England and you march to Germany, or, it's a long slog and you're there for the entirety of the war, and either you go home when you win or you go home in a box, one or the other. And just like, there's so much, like, because of how fucked up things were done back then, obviously, because it was the 1940s. And Joe and I on his show talked about how, like, if you were a Marine and you died on Guadalcanal, guess where you got buried? Right where the fuck you died. Like, there was none of this bringing people back home. So like, there's a mythology to it, because it's the last time, World War II is the last time we can say, look at this time that we defeated evil in the world, even though Britain and America both had very active fascist groups politically, and would have gone fascist if Germany didn't get too fucking froggy about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, if Germany hadn't declared war on America after America declared war on Japan post Pearl Harbor, there's a whole counterfactual about how that would have gone down, because, they're fighting a war against non-white people was far more popular post a surprise attack than fighting a war against Germany. There was a significant sympathy towards fascists and fascism in America from Americans,
and just Germans, because there were a lot of Germans in America.
There are a lot of Germans,
too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, similarly in this country, one of the things that I find very funny is how rarely people want to dig below the absolute surface of things like the suffragettes to determine how many of them went on to be very, very pro-Hitler. There was one in particular, because this came up during the 2019 election, that the first woman MP to actually take her seat, because if I remember correctly, there was a woman MP elected who was a socialist elected in a seat in, I believe, Northern Ireland, who was for Sinn Féin and did not take her seat, because they typically do not. If they win seats, they don't believe that, in British sovereignty over any part of Ireland, which I respect. And so as a result, they won't take their seats even when they win. So there was a woman who won, who was a left-wing candidate, and she did not take her seat. The first woman to take a seat, I believe, was in the Liberal Party, but I can't remember. Her name was Nancy Astor, and she was extraordinarily pro-Hitler, and also extraordinarily pro-Hitler because she supported his persecution of the Jews. And this is all on record. And there was this very disorienting moment during the 2019 election where it was like, Monday, Labor is anti-Semitic. Tuesday, Labor is anti-Semitic. Wednesday, Labor is anti-Semitic. Thursday, cross-party MP dedication to the statue to a Nazi. Friday, Labor is anti-Semitic. And just, it completely escaped notice. Because, I mean, British people have a switch in their brain they can just flip to just pretend that reality doesn't exist. It's really impressive to see. But this whole phenomenon of just sort of flattening it and looking at it as like, oh, it's a good conflict. It's this heroic conflict. It was a binary conflict of good versus evil. And it always surprises me, because in this country in particular, in the United Kingdom, where I live and have lived for almost 4 years now, it tends to not even be about, in my perspective, about the veterans who would need the charity provided when it's sort of marketed to people. It's kind of evoked as this link to generational greatness gone by, if you will. And in America, in my perspective, that is not and has not ever been the case. The sort of Band of Brothers moment of like really, really just rolling out the red carpet about World War II stuff in the late 90s, that completely went away post 9/11. And it became like our troops, the troops who are fighting our imperial wars abroad now. And all that stuff is focused on like Iraq and Afghanistan veterans who were wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's focused on, young people with families by and large who are injured, stuff like that. I've heard from Vietnam veterans who have said that in a way, being a veteran for them post 9/11 kind of improved their ability to sort of like parlay that into stuff in their lives, because all of a sudden people were like, oh, we love veterans, all veterans, to include you guys who we kind of ignored before. And I realized, like, okay, there's a lot of mythology about how Vietnam veterans were treated when they came back. From guys that I know who are Vietnam veterans who did not strike me as people who were really into like sexing up the stuff to make it sound like it was traumatic. It was more along the lines of, it was just sort of like, oh, that sucks, you were a veteran, whatever. You know what I mean? And
so
I feel like
somebody adding you on Twitter is basically what this.
Well, no, it wasn't even that. It wasn't even people being hostile. I mean, there were obviously like there's going to be examples of being hostile and whatever. I mean, like, but then again, like individual anecdotes can fucking can make things sound way more compelling than they actually are. I got spit on when I was in college once, like my first week in ROTC. Do I think that was a typical experience? No. It was just some fucking drunk chick spitting on us when we were doing a road march early one morning. Like, whatever. You know what I mean? That wasn't like a national scandal. Now, I could go be a right-wing freak about this, but like, keep some fucking perspective. You know what I mean? But the point I'm trying to make here is that when these guys the experience that I've heard from guys who are Vietnam veterans was just basically that, if you look at stuff like pre-Clinton, when they decided that dodging the draft was bad, when you have these quotes on record, from guys like Ted Nugent or guys like Dick Cheney, who are just like, yeah, fuck it. Why would I do that? That's stupid. That's for suckers. That's for marks. Why would I fucking let myself get drafted? That was kind of the norm. And so guys who had been there like, well, that sucks. I don't care. So I think it was just the impression that I got from people was there was more just ambivalence. Now, obviously there's going to be exceptions to that. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to go down the route of being like, our brave veterans from Vietnam who were spit on by hippies who were in charge of everything, because that definitely happened. Like, that's not, I've never heard that from anyone whose perspective I would believe in. You know what I mean? And just like I said before, if I were to turn around and be like, I got spit on in 2003 and therefore literally at every college campus in America, ROTC cadets were getting spit on, like, that's stupid. No, that didn't fucking happen.
I mean, in 2003, that's just, discovering a new kink.
I just remember it. It was just kind of like something out of a dream, man. We were doing a road march, and it was early in the morning. It was, I think our link up time was 4 a.m. So like, fucking 4:15 a.m. You're out doing a road march, and the people who are still out they're on the good shit. And on 3rd Street in Bloomington, Indiana, there's this kind of low-slung rock wall that follows the kind of campus. I mean, technically, it's still part of campus south of 3rd Street, but like the kind of core part of IU's campus is within that wall, like north of 3rd Street. And so we were running on the sidewalk, doing road march shit, training for Ranger Challenge, the ROTC varsity sport. And there was a girl and a guy walking down the other way, like on the wall, like perched on the wall, really. And so we just walked by, and yeah, this girl just fucking straight up spits in a dude's face and hits me and him. He hits him more than me, but I get it, and he gets it, and he just reacts. He's like, "What the fuck did you do that for, bitch?" And the guy with her, who's drunk out of his mind, is like, "Oh, you think because you're in the army you can call a woman a bitch?" It's just like, So like for me to turn around and make that like my fucking, like it was then that the left betrayed me kind of like fucking dramatic moment that a lot of these right-wing grifters do. That's insane. That's so stupid. Get the fuck out of here, But I think it does kind of feed into it's an aspect of this kind of mythology and mythologizing around it. And I think Americans do it too, but we've done it really big in the direction of like, well, the wars are going very, very badly, so we have to really, really support the troops. And also that means dumping money into obvious charity grifts. And in Britain, the Iraq War was so unpopular here, so incredibly unpopular, that I think in a way, invoking the Tommies and the Blitz and Dunkirk was more of like a way to almost depoliticize it or like remove it from that context and put it in, call it like a less problematic context, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was specifically told, like when I went to the port of Qasr down south, to not, because it was all British troops down there, and they're like, hey, we're taking you down here, but don't take any pictures of the British troops and don't talk about the British troops being down here. And I was like, this is not secret. Obviously, they're here. Like, you wouldn't be bringing public affairs if this was a secret mission here. And they're like, no, it's just that England doesn't really like that they're here. So, and this is 2009, 2010. So like, there's that whole like, yeah, we're not, they don't like it. They don't, the British people. So we just don't want to talk. They just didn't want news stories about how the troops were in Iraq. The British troops were in Iraq. And I thought that was so very strange because I don't know. I don't know why I thought it was just, it felt and I guess at the time it's like, what, don't you want to, your brave troops are down here doing brave troop stuff? Don't you guys want to talk about that? It's like, no, don't fucking mention it.
No, not at all.
Don't talk about it.
Especially not by 2009. No, not at all. It was incredibly unpopular. And I mean, I think one of the reasons why Tony Blair remains so incredibly unpopular in this country is because of how, there were huge protests against the Iraq War in 2003 in America, but the ones in America were significantly dwarfed by the ones in Europe. I think some of the protests in Europe were some of the largest protests in human history. I know that there were, if I remember correctly, here in London, it was enormous. In Athens, it was like 1 million people. It was significantly unpopular. It was incredibly unpopular. And obviously it happened anyway. And in Britain's case, Blair, from what I understand, was just really into the scare quote special relationship and thought that this was going to sort of cement Britain's relationship with America. And they lied their asses off. They were there for the scam just like everyone else. And it wound up becoming so politically toxic that it's never really the stain of it has never really left the Labour Party. I've heard some people say that one of the reasons why Blair is so unpopular, unfortunately, is because a significant number of people in this country think he wasn't racist enough. But Bush is still popular in America. He was unpopular when he left office. He was incredibly unpopular. But post-Trump, he's become seen as like this elder statesman, despite being far more destructive than Trump overall. Like orders of magnitude more destructive. And that hasn't really happened with Blair. Like genuinely. The British media treats it like that. They always like, oh, rare intervention from Tony Blair. It's like the 95th time he's come in and be like, I hate Jeremy Corbyn. But Blair is, if you look at Blair's popularity in this country as it's polled even today, it's like massively underwater, like massively, massively negative. And so I think he should
start doing paintings of fucked up British troops like Bush did. Really rehabilitate himself by being like, hey, I'm sorry that you got your leg blown off in my very unpopular and unnecessary war. I painted you terribly. Would you like that?
Yeah, man, bro, can we just pause for a second to talk about how ghoulish that is?
It's so fucked up, man. It's so, Did you ever watch there's this TV show that was on Amazon Prime called Alpha House, which was like three Republican senators all living together and like sharing a townhouse in Washington, D.C. It was a comedy, like kind of a dark comedy. But one of the things that one of the senators like gets a hold of like an original bush. And so he's constantly talking about this original bush that he has. And it looks absolutely god awful because like all of them do because the man can't paint. Like, here's the dude. But here's the problem. Bush is the guy who did all the terrible fascist shit and then became a painter, and Hitler did it the opposite way. So,
yeah, I mean, we did an episode about Margaret Thatcher on Britanology, and one of the points that the guy that we brought on, who's like a historian of Britain in the 70s and 80s, said was that one of the reasons why they got rid of Thatcher, because I mean, she got deposed by her own party, and then they still went on to win another election without her before Labour finally took over. Was that they just like she had basically won all of the set piece battles she'd set up for herself, and like she had total dominance over British politics. That after a certain time they were just kind of exhausted with her bullshit, and so she became like super opposed to German reunification and was annoying them about it. So they just got rid of her. But the point I make is that bringing that up is just sort of like, yeah, at a certain point you've basically won everything. The only thing Bush didn't manage to do was privatize Social Security. Everything else, he got what he wanted. So, like, you know, by the time he left office, it was just sort of like, well, this is all falling the fuck apart. We got a horrible financial crisis. It's the worst, financial turmoil since the Great Depression. Iraq's a complete disaster. Afghanistan's a complete disaster.
We keep shutting the government down because nobody can agree on a budget because every House rep and senator has just become a culture war expert at this point.
Yeah, Bush goes to the fucking last G7 meeting and does like a really creepy neck massage to Angela Merkel, and then it's like goodbye from the world's largest releaser of CO2 or something like that. Like he just like he won. He fucking won. So now he gets to paint portraits of wounded warriors, and that somehow wormed its way into the hearts of the dumbest people in America. And I mean, maybe I should count myself among them because when I was, a fucking teenager, I was like, well, the government wouldn't go to war in Iraq unless they had a reason, like they had, evidence. I was really, really credulous. Granted, I was a teenager, but like that is
what we were taught in school, is that you go to war because there's a reason to go to war. We just didn't know that
they
sometimes
wouldn't lie, and that you just don't have the evidence and blah blah blah. And like it was it was really overwhelming. And like I guess to me, I saw it happening, and I was just like, well, they wouldn't do this unless they had a reason to. So I mean, I guess that's that. And to me, it was like, all right, where's the next coupon for the fucking discounted Mountain Dew slushie at the gas station? I didn't really, have any context for it. And it's kind of embarrassing in retrospect because, I had friends back then that, we didn't fight over this or anything, but I had friends who were like super against the Iraq war from day zero. And I respect the fuck out of them now for it. I just was like, I was a moron. I mean, as evinced by the fact that I was then like, oh, the Army's offering me a scholarship. I'm sure the war will be over by then. Like, fucking idiot.
Yeah, wars don't last 10 to 20 years. That would be insane.
That's never happened in American history, ever. Not once. Anyway, Francis, we've talked a lot about war and mythology and things along those lines, and I feel like we should run some footage of the bonus episode.
Yeah, the bonus episode. This week, I did something new and different, and I think that it turned out really well. In that, I went and found a bunch of like insane letters to advice columnists like your Dear Prudies and whatnot. And so we decided to go ahead and try to answer some of them ourselves because we're three guys, me and Joe and Carrie. We're world weary. We know things, and like I feel like I'm a dad at least, so like there's some things that we can help out with kids and raising children and doing all this stuff. So I think it really turned out well, and I hope that the part that you run here is about the kid that's really into Pokemon porn. All right, you guys ready for the next one? This one's a kid advice for child raising, which I know you two don't have children, but I think that that you'll be okay with this one. Yeah. All right, so I always thought I could accept anything that parenthood might throw at me. I knew that I could embrace my son if he were straight, gay, bi, trans, etc. There is a controlling consciousness of the universe, and it has a nasty sense of humor. Putting it bluntly,
so I'm waiting for there's going to be a but here. This is like anything like this is usually anyone. It's like I don't care if someone's black, white, or purple is like the same. Well, the same sort of shit.
I support my trans son, and then he accepted a job in Cleveland.
Okay, it's a little bit better than that. Okay, putting it bluntly, my son is sexually attracted to Pokemon. He dropped hints.
He's gonna clap the Mr. Mime cheeks.
Matchup use pound.
It was super effective.
All the Kleenex disappeared from my house, and I heard him yelling out Charizard in his room when he didn't know that I was home.
So it says he dropped hints that I didn't really pick up on, but really, but wait, over the past
he was
few
dropping
years,
hints about this to his mother
about fucking Pokemon. Over the last few years, I've stumbled across evidence of his browsing habits that left me pretty clear about his proclivities. Should I address this with him? Try to discourage an orientation that, to me, it seems kind of pathetic. Which, like, I get it. It's just like, if you're going to be into weird kink shit, can you be into, like, cool weird? Can you, like, jack off to Warhammer 40K or something? Why are you jacking off to Mr. Mime? Don't do that.
I find, like, jerking off to Space Marines probably the same. Either way, it just means you're not actually going to have sex. Well, if you're really into Pokemon, I feel like there's suits or something a partner could wear where it just, like, has a butt flap or something.
But I wonder, like, I want to know how old this kid is. And, like, I also, like, want to sit him down, her down, whoever this is, and just be like, I mean, are you jacking off to this, or are you just, like, confused by the internet? Because we've all, like, it's like, is it a Kurt Schlichter thing where it says tentacle porn because, like, you were literally just, you weren't jacking off to it. You were just like, what does like sweaty, like come on. Who hasn't multiple times seen the picture of the drawing of Luigi pregnant with Sonic the Hedgehog, putting his ear to Luigi's pregnant belly? Like, is that a
Francis,
sexual
what
thing?
What are you doing at work?
Bro, don't act like you're better than me here. We've all spent enough time on the internet that we've seen some weird shit.
I am confident that I'm better than this.
I mean, I like to think that it's also like maybe he's just like their kid is like looking up this just like, I don't know, troll one of their friends and send it to them or whatever.
I think that's probably accurate. Yeah.
And then like as a result, like imagine being the poor fucking
Pokemon porn right now.
Nice.
being the poor fucking 14-year-old whose like parents sit them down and it's just like, okay, well, we've decided that your father and I have decided we can accept you. And you're like, oh God, this moment is going to be burned in my head for the rest of my life.
And well, as long as you don't find your mom's letter to Prudy about it, you should be fine.
I just want to make sure the listeners understand that I'm not kidding. I just sent it to our group chat.
I don't see it yet. Let's see. Joe is typing. No, I'm not clicking on that. No. I thought it was going to be a bit. I thought it was going to be. See here. I thought first off, this is my work computer, so I'm definitely not clicking on it there. But I thought you were going to like show us a picture or something. You sent a Pornhub video, bro. Come on.
No, it's not a Pornhub video. It's an entire category.
Oh. Wonderful.
Also,
yeah,
I guess our advice there is if your child is evidencing, this kind of fetish, they're apparently not alone. So,
showing one of 1,201 pages of Pokemon porn. So, remember what you're not alone.
I mean, I guess, they were right when they said the internet was eventually just going to bring us all closer together.
Yeah, it lets you find like not only the people who are into your kink, but also just kinks that you didn't know. Like, who could guess that one day they'll want to jack off to a Pokemon? I don't know, but you know what? Teenage years are weird. We just had porn that we found in the woods when I was a kid.
I'm honestly more confused because I also had this happen to me. I'm more confused as to why there was so much porn in the goddamn woods.
Yeah, the wood porn stash is one of those weird, like, why did we all find something like that?
It's the chicken and the egg.
The porn. Who is the porn fairy that was leaving these all over the place?
I'm gonna be absolutely certain here and say we don't want to meet that person.
Once again, though, I feel like this should be its own separate episode of Midwesternology, porn in the woods.
Woods porn.
because that is not a thing that I am familiar with. That is not like a. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone saying like or met anyone. Maybe it's like we don't have enough like unincorporated land here in the East. Maybe that's why. I don't know.
Look at what they've taken from you. You don't even have enough woods to stash porn in.
Where did you hide your porn then? Like if not in a cardboard box in the woods, completely uncovered with no protection. That's what you do with
slightly
penthouses.
Soggy and water damaged.
I mean,
I've never seen a non-water damaged copy of Penthouse before in my life.
Yeah, all the women is like, is that a cum shot? No, that's just water staining.
I went to a pick apart like auto parts place once, and in one of the vehicles, not only found a vehicle that had the remainder of like the installed breathalyzer machine still in it, but also
yes,
there was a bunch
Midwest
of
energy.
But also there was a bunch of vintage pornography scattered throughout the car. So like my dude was living his best life. Unfortunately, not within the bounds of the law. But he was just drinking and driving and jerking it, just like all over like the south coast of Massachusetts. Apparently,
how did the front end or the back end of that did it look like it had hit something or been hit from all the drinking and jacking that he was doing?
I mean, I like to think that it didn't look like it'd been heavily damaged. So I'm really hoping that he just like got off parole, didn't have to have the breathalyzer thing anymore, and just bought an entirely new car, just junked the fucking thing where it stood.
I'm just picturing a guy with like doing the knee on the steering wheel thing, jerking with one hand, drinking with the other, living the fucking dream. This is why we had a revolution.
Yeah, this is what the Constitution's all about, ladies and gentlemen.
You just see that like as you're like, as you're driving to work in the morning, you just like look next to you in the HOV lane, and like the guy behind you is just fucking. It's like 7:30 in the morning, and he's just like. He's got a passenger who's just swigging Jack and just jerking it, just like
his tabs are expired.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen people drinking while driving, and I've seen people jacking it while driving. I've not seen both at the same time. So
I've never seen anybody jacking it while driving, and because I said that, I'm gonna see that like today in Yerevan traffic, just like Barnum says.
Not even in traffic. It's gonna be your next taxi driver. Have fun.
Honestly, that's not outside the realm of possibility.
You guys ready? Okay, so another one for kids. So there are two children that live across the street from us, age 6 and 9.
Cut them both in half. Next question.
They have serious boundary issues. They walk into our house without knocking, ring the doorbell during the day when my husband is sleeping, ask us for food and drinks, or just help themselves without asking, and ask my kids to give them their toys or money. We're very firm with them, always telling them, this is not your house, you have to knock, or you can't have our dinner. We're firm, but they are willful and resistant. It's a constant battle. So children are constantly invading your house and stealing your food.
I mean, is it a stand your ground state?
Are you a family of bears?
Is this a raccoon? Are these raccoons that are coming into your house? Are you calling raccoons children? Because you could just trap them, man. It's fine.
I like that. Like what was kind of like in some ways the plot to like I don't know, like the Cosby Family, or like I remember like the family at the beginning of the family at the beginning of Caddyshack, where it's like, do you live here? I feel like this is what once was a movie plot line is now like a felony. Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, that's a lot of movies from when we grew up.
I mean, if they're small enough, I mean, a 22 should take care of it.
a little 410 shotgun, a little bird shot. It's not going to kill them, but it'll make them rethink they're stealing some jugs out of your.
If it's one thing that I learned, you can keep unwanted people away if you dig a hole and you fill it with a substance known as ANFO. And you wire it to a cell phone.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. You can follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way, and you can always read more writings, buy stuff, all kinds of things at hellofawaydediet.com. And thank you for listening. Thanks for constantly giving us your time, your your money, your everything that's valuable in this world to listen to the two of us ramble for an hour once a week.